Hello everyone. Today's YouTube video is going to be on Xanathar Guild Kingpin. It's going to be an EDH deck tech on one of the new commanders from Dungeons & Dragons: A Forgotten Realm. Before I get into the YouTube video though, I wanted to remind you to please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you could go and please follow me on twitch.tv/Jarvis_Moonbeam, at Twitter and Instagram at Jarvis_Moonbeam. And you can also follow and join my Discord by following the link in the description below. But Xanathar, he is a 4 blue and a black legendary beholder. 5/6 that at the beginning of your upkeep, choose target opponent. Until end of turn, that player can't cast spells. You may look at the top card of their library anytime. You may play the top card of their library. You may spend mana as though or mana of any color to cast spells this way. So, it's a theft deck. Pretty much everything here is going to be dealing with stealing things in some way and benefiting off stealing those things. Very much like how you would have Send Triplets be a theft deck, this is that without the white. So to start, we're going to be stealing permanents. Thieving Skydiver is 1 and a blue and it has kicker of X. X cannot be 0. When it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, you gain control of target artifact with CMC X or less. And if it's an equipment, you attach it to Thieving Skydiver. Dada Adele Acquisitor, 1 and 2 blue, has Island Walk. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, search that player's library for an artifact card and exile it. And that player shuffles his or her library until end of turn. You may play that card. Thalakos Deceiver. This is one of my favorite cards with theft decks because it's not really played that often. It's 3 and a blue, has a shadow, and sacrifice Thalakos Deceiver. You gain control of target creature permanently, and you only use this ability if Thalakos Deceiver is attacking and unblocked. And it's a 1/1. Turgid God of Fright, 3 black, has Menace, and whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You also do have her backside in Turgid's Lantern for 3 and a black, where you tap it, target player loses 3 life, unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card, and for 3 and a black, you could untap the Lantern. Agent of Treachery, this is my favorite card from M20. 5 blue, when it enters the battlefield, get control of target permanent. Beat of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own, draw 3 cards. Herald of Leshrac, 6 and a black. Flying, cumulative upkeep of gain control of a land you don't control. He gets +1/+1 for each land you control but don't own. And when he leaves play, each player gains control of each land he or she owns that you control. Lord of the Void, 4 black. Flying, when Lord of the Void deals combat damage to a player, exile the top 7 cards of that player's library, then put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield under your control. Dominate, X 1 blue, gain control of target creature with converted mana cost X or less. Acquire is 3 blue, search target opponent's library for an artifact card and put that card into play under your control, and that player shuffles his or her library. Bribery, 3 blue, search target's opponent's library for a creature card and put that card into play under your control, and that player shuffles his or her library. Thrilling Encore, 4 and a black. Put onto the battlefield under your control all creature cards and all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. Blatant Thievery, 4 blue. For each opponent, gain control of target permanent that player controls. Expropriate, 7 blue. It has Council's Dilemma, starting with you. Each player votes for time or money. For each time vote, take an extra turn after this one. For each money vote, choose a permanent owned by the voter and gain control of it. Then you exile Expropriate. Then you also have Stealing Resources. This would be stealing card draw, tax effects in a way, and then also just stealing spells, possibly. You have Hull Breacher, 2 and a blue. Has flash, and if opponent would draw a card except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, instead you create a treasure token. Opposition Agent, 2 and a black. You control your opponents while they're searching their libraries. When an opponent is searching their library, they exile each card they find. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though or mana of any color to cast them. Thief of Sanity, 1 a blue and a black, has flying. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 3 cards of that player's library. Exile one of them face down. Then put the rest into their graveyard. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may look at it, you may cast it, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast that spell. Gonti, Lord of Luxury, 2 and 2 black. It has Death Touch, and when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of target opponent's library. Exile one of them face down. Then put the rest on the bottom of that library in a random order. You may look at and cast that card for as long as it remains exiled. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast that spell. Notion Thief, 2 a blue and a black, has flash. If an opponent would draw a card except the first one he or she draws in each of his or her draw steps, instead that player skips that draw and you draw a card instead. Fallen Shinobi, 3 a blue and a black, has Ninjutsu, 2 a blue and a black. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles the top 2 cards of their library. Until end of turn, you may play those cards without paying their mana cost. Wandering Archaic is 5 generic. Whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they may pay 2 generic. If they don't, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. You do also have the backside, which Explore the Vast Land is 3 generic. I don't ever plan to cast this side, but it is each player looks at the top 5 cards of their library, reveals a land card and or an instance or sorcery card from among them, puts those cards they revealed into their hand and the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order, and each player gains 3 life. Emerpool the Promised End is 13 generic. It costs 1 less to cast for each card type among cards in your graveyard. When you cast it, you gain control of target opponents during their next turn. After that turn, that player does get an extra turn, but it has Flying, Trample, and Protection from instants. Archaic Dream Render, 1 Dimir. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library. And -1, target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, then exile each opponent's graveyard. Archaic Nightmare Muse, 3 a blue and a black. The +1 is create a 2/3 blue and black nightmare creature token with whenever this creature attacks or blocks. Each opponent exiles the top 2 cards of their library. The -3 is return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, and that player exiles a card from their hand. -7, you may cast up to 3 face-up cards your opponents own from exile without paying their mana cost. Both the Archaics are very important in clearing off the top card of the library, so in case they're not cards that you actually wanted to play, but you had their control of their turn. Narset's Reversal, 2 blue. Copy target instant or sorcery spell, then return it to owner's hand. You may choose new targets for the copy. Mindslaver, 6 generic. 4 generic, and tapping it, you sacrifice Mindslaver. You control target player's next turn. Mystic Remora is 1 blue, has cumulative upkeep of 1, and whenever target opponent successfully casts a non-creature spell, you may draw a card. That player may pay 4 generic mana to counter this effect. Rogue Class is a blue and a black. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library face down. You may look at it for as long as it remains exiled. 1 a blue and a black. Creatures you control have menace. 2 a blue and a black. You may play cards exiled with Rogue Class, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. Rhystic Study, 2 and a blue. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. Mind's Dilation of 5 blue. Whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, that player exiles the top card of his or her library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Then you have interaction, enablers, and other good stuff. So interaction, to interact with your opponents. Enablers, things that enable your win con. And good stuff, just things that don't necessarily fit underneath either category. Glasspool Mimic. You may have Glasspool Mimic enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature you control, except it's a shapeshifter rogue, in addition to its other types. The backside is Glasspool Shore that enters tap and it taps for blue mana. Reason why I'm playing this is I'm going to be playing a couple other copy spells, just so that way you can either copy a card like Agent of Treachery, or possibly even if you have if you have Sakashima out of 1,000 Faces, you don't have to worry about the legendary rule, and you can copy Xanathar and lock all of your opponents out of the game. You then have Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, 3 and a blue. You may have Sakashima of 1,000 Faces enter the battlefield as a copy of another creature you control, except it has Sakashima of 1,000 Faces other abilities, and the legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control. It also has partner, but not relevant here. Sakashima the Imposter, 2 blue. When it comes into play, you may choose a creature in play. If you do, Sakashima comes into play as a copy of that creature, except its name is still Sakashima the Imposter. It's still legendary, and it gains 2 blue, returns Sakashima the Imposter to its owner's hand at the end of turn. Solemn Simulacrum, 4 generic. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put that onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. When it dies, you may draw a card. Spark Double, 3 and a blue. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature or planeswalker you control, except it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it if it's a creature, enters with an additional loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker, and it isn't legendary if that permanent is legendary. Thassa Deep Dwelling is 3 and a blue, indestructible. As long as your devotion to blue is less than 5, Thassa isn't a creature. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 other target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. So it's good for getting those ETBs. Like maybe if you just need a ramp with Solemn Simulacrum or Agent of Treachery, stealing stuff from your opponents. And for 3 and a blue, you tap another target creature. Scheming Symmetry is a single black. Choose 2 target players. Each of them searches their library for a card, then shuffles their library and puts that card on top of it. Vampiric Tutor is a single black. Search your library for a card, then shuffle your library and put that card on top of it. You lose 2 life. Counter Spell is 2 blue. Counter target spell. Cyclonic Rift is 1 and a blue. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, or you can also overload it for 6 and a blue, and instead of target, you replace it with each. Demonic Tutor, 1 and a black. Search your library for a card and put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. Diabolic Tenant, same thing as Demonic Tutor, except you also have to sacrifice a creature as part of the cost. Drowning the Lock is a blue and a black. Choose one. You either counter target spell with CMC less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard, or you destroy target creature with CMC less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard. Feed the Swarm is 1 and black. Destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's converted mana cost. Memory Lapse is 1 and a blue. You counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, put it on top of its owner's library instead of into that player's graveyard. Fierce Guardianship, 2 and a blue. If you control a commander, you may cast this spell without paying its mana cost, and you counter target non-creature spell. Toxic Deluge is 2 and a black. As an additional cost to cast the spell, pay X life. All creatures get -X until end of turn. Damnation, 2 black. Destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated. Deadly Rollick, 3 black. If you control 3 and a black, I should say. If you control a commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost. Exile target creature. Eat to Extinction, 3 and a black. Exile target creature or planeswalker, and then you surveil 1. Haggard Mauling is 2 black. The spell costs 1 less to cast if an opponent controls no basic lands. You destroy target creature. Its backside is Haggard Brewed Pit. Haggard Brewed Pit enters the battlefield tapped, and it creates a black mana. Stolen Identity is a 4 blue. You create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature, and it also has Cipher. So, that means when you can exile Stolen Identity and encode it onto a creature you control, and whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, you're then able to go and cast a copy of the encoded card without paying its mana cost. Seagate Restoration, 4 blue. Draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand +1. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. Its backside is Seagate Reborn. It can give you, it's a land that gives a blue mana, and you may pay 3 life to make it so it doesn't enter the battlefield tapped. Lantern of Insight is 1 generic. Each player plays with the top card of his or her library revealed. Then you can sacrifice it, and target player shuffles his or her library. Very good to know what opponent you want to take their turn. Lightning Greaves is to go and protect your commander or other important creatures. Same thing with Swiftfoot Boots. Lithiform Engine is 4 generic. For 2 and tapping it, you copy target activated or triggered ability, like the commander's ability. For 3 and tapping it, you could copy target instant or sorcery spell, and choose new targets for the copy. For 4 and tapping it, you can copy target's permanent spell you control, and the copy becomes a token. And then we have our mana base. You have Mana Crypt, and typically I don't put Mana Crypt in a lot of my builds unless I'm playing them at a higher level table. However, with this being a 7 CMC commander, I really want to go and play more fast mana than I typically lean into. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Thelwar Stone, Talisman of Dominance, which is the Dimir Talisman, Thought Vessel. Then you have the lands, Academy Ruins, Cabal Coppers, Castle Lockpoint, Castle Vantress, Choked Estuary, Clearwater Pathway, Murkwater Pathway, Command Tower, Ancient Tomb, Drowned Catacombs, Fabled Passage, Hall of Storm Giants, which is one of the new cards from Dungeons & Dragons. It's a manland. Hive of the Eye Tyrant, same thing, it's the manland. Storm Giants is blue, Eye Tyrant is black. Morphic Pool, Mystic Sanctuary, Prismatic Vista, Bajuka Bog, Reliquary Tower, Scavenger Grounds, Strip Mine, Sunken Hollow, Temple of Deceit, Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, and Watery Grave. Finishing it off, we are playing a total of 4 basic swamps and 8 basic islands, as this deck does skew heavier to blue mana. Now that I've gone through the deck tech, give me feedback. What did you like about the deck? What don't you like about the deck? What changes would you make? What would you add? What would you take away? Yet again, please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to share this video. But until next time, have a good one. See ya.